So here we are to continue, and I'm very pleased to introduce you our panelists today, who are Mr. Andrew Longton. He's the Chief Development Officer of Movenpick Hotels and Resorts. Sit here.
I'll sit next to you.
Yeah. Mrs. Alexandra Plain, Head of Real Estate and Hospitality, Goling WLG, Paris. Please. Mr. Nabil Slitin, founder and managing director of Downtown Hotel Corporation. Mr. Adil Khayan, general manager, Marita Group. And Mr. Faiz Hasbini, director development, Hilton. So today we have a few topics we'll be addressing. Brownfield investments, the growth of the Chinese investments in Morocco, how North Africa is attracting international operators, why private banks are lukewarm about investing in hospitality in Morocco, addressing the lack of bankable projects in North Africa, wellness and sustainability, tourism. We might not follow this chronological order necessarily. We'll get the discussion going and see how it flows. If I can move the slides. Sorry. Yeah, you see, we have a small technological issue, I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. So we are going to start with just these graphs without going too much into them, but just to give a visual idea of the trends of how the hotels, what's in the pipeline in North Africa and Sub-Sahara, and how many hotels are being actually built or in development, and the corresponding number of rooms. So I would start with you, Andrew. How would you say today, how do you feel about the development of Movenpick and of the brands in general in Africa, particularly maybe also in North Africa and Sub-Saharan?
Sure. Just to frame it, we have Movenpick, we have 22 hotels open in Africa. Half of those are in Egypt. In terms of what's in the pipeline, we have about 6 hotels in the pipeline, of which 2 are in Egypt, the other 4 are elsewhere. In fact, our newest hotel is actually in Abidjan, which you worked on. I'm flying there tonight to have that signed. We are putting more resources into Africa because we feel it has huge potential. We honestly have probably been a little bit conservative and slow in the past. We have focused more north, on the north side of things, and we see for us there is certainly a lot of scope, down through West Africa, probably East Africa and down towards the south, which we really haven't penetrated that much, and it's definitely a focus for us.
And for instance, in terms of human resources, and how would you describe the experience of Movenpick, like developing a hotel in North Africa where the market is already mature and in sub-Saharan countries? What are really the challenges you are facing in both areas?
Sure. I think the challenge for us, and just to give you an idea of the challenge, you know, obviously when we were, a year ago I had a full head of hair. Now I've lost it, and that's probably because of the challenge of trying to develop hotels in this region. But for us, I think the biggest challenge, and I think it's the same with actually many operators, it is, it is finding the right partner.
Yeah.
Because management contracts, as you know, they are long-term things, 20 years or more. So you've probably heard the term. It is like a marriage, and like all marriages, you want to avoid a divorce because it is quite expensive. So you want to make sure you marry the right person, and it's very much the same with a hotel management contract as well. So obviously the key is finding the right person to obviously marry. So that's key. And then the other key issue is ensuring that it is built to the standards that you expect and to be built within a reasonable amount of time. We've actually done a study. The average Movenpick hotel in Africa, from the day it breaks ground to the day it opens, is 7 years.
Yeah.
In Asia, it is 3.5 years.
Yes.
So that is quite a challenge.
Being also just for Movenpick a single brand, compared of course to Hilton and other operators, I mean, in terms of strategy and growth for you, why is it that you only have one brand?
Yeah, sure. We actually get asked this a lot, and the simple answer is, why not?
Yeah.
Okay, we will do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, and it's really simple. All of our resources in all of our offices, every single person is focused on promoting, supporting one brand and selling one brand.
Yeah.
And we are finding now, especially in recent times, and not to say anything, bad about many of our other actual competitors, but we are getting really positive feedback from owners, especially over the last 6 months or so, that they are really wanting an operator that has one brand. They are getting quite upset with knowing that the same operator may have another brand next door. So owners are responding very well to a single branded operator.
Well, I think there can be a balance concerning hotel operators and their brands, and maybe just reflect about it. If you take Marriott and Starwoods today, that adds up to 18 brands. Can anyone here in the room give me just 2-3 brands of Marriott? It's kind of difficult, especially 18. So maybe I would like also to have the point of view of Mr. Hasbini Ferez on the number of brands.
I think, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the panel. It's really nice to be here. I think from Hilton's point of view, the brands that we have really sits in their own swim lanes. That's something that we're quite proud of. So we don't see any brand atrophy basically happening between one brand and another. And this is something that we carefully planned, and this is why we have been launching even more and more brands in order to fit certain segments that basically we do not want to stretch one of our brands into them. So to come back to the question about having one brand versus multiple brands, I think that having multiple brands allows us to really understand the owner's wish or owner's development even more, and to be able to provide a brand that really fits the location and the vision of that project. So it's something that has been working well for us in that sense. So multiple brands has its advantages, definitely.
Yeah.
Too much brands can basically have certain atrophies, which is something that we want to avoid actually. So.
And for instance, for your development here in Africa, let's say, and particularly that the trend is on building, hotels that are more in the business segments and in the cities and so on, and also some that are more leisure-oriented, like resorts. For your brands, what is the demand that you feel here, let's say in Morocco, where you just opened the hotel in Tangier?
Well, actually, it's quite important to make a difference of each market in Morocco. Because basically, if you ask me about Casablanca, I would tend to say that business hotels are much more needed than in Marrakesh, for example. So this is something that really needs to be differentiated. Again, I mean, having multiple brands means you can cater for these different plans. So this is really the advantage of working with a very big group. So to answer your question of what is needed, I think it's very market specific. In Casablanca, business hotels are needed. In Marrakesh, in Jadida, in these kind of markets, we would tend to focus more on full service resort style hotels because this is what the market would want. So.
Okay, and Hilton, I understand, has really strategic plans for development in North Africa. You just opened an office with regard to other competitors. Why is it that you opened an office?
So I think it's undeniable to say that North Africa and Africa has been surrounded by a certain wave of positivity.
Yeah.
It's a wave of positivity that we want to be part of. Morocco, especially being more and more positioned as a hub for Africa, is something that attracted us to this market, and hence why we opened an office. We are a global company, but we really like to think regional. So basically having a presence regionally is something that works well for us. It's better for us to be able to connect to the different owners and that kind of approach. So that's why we opened an office here, in order to make sure that this focus is acted upon.
And are the owners here in Morocco starting to perceive it, or in the region?
Definitely. I mean, we've had a very good traction this year. I think that we're getting closer and closer, and we found the right partners, and we are working on these plans together. I mean, we have already 2 hotels open in Tangier, Hilton opening last week.
Yes.
It was a success, and and we're planning to keep it that way.
You have one also planned in Bourg-Reg in Rabat, I understand?
Definitely. We're in discussions for Rabat.
Okay. And for instance, what would be for Morocco in terms of human resources, training, what would be your added value? Or North Africa?
In terms of resources, I think it's always very good to have a group that is able to bring you knowledge from everywhere. One of the advantages of working with a global company is that you can attract talent from everywhere and be able to make sure that this talent connects and transmits that talent to the local talent. I mean, Morocco definitely has a talent pool that's very interesting. Education is something that is important, and we're able to bring in sort of like the best practices and apply them here, and basically make sure that more and more this hospitality HR aspect is taken care of. So also to add, from an operations perspective, our operations for North Africa is done out of Egypt.
Yeah.
So we make sure to bring in people from the region for the region, which is something that's important, I think.
Okay, and for the development in sub-Sahara countries, how do you see it?
We also have an office in Cape Town to take care of the sub-Saharan countries. And we've had also very good tractions with 39 hotels open in all of Africa and 43 on the pipeline. So it's been working well for us.
Okay. Now I would like also to have the point of view, because you mentioned that you would like to be talking about hotel management agreements.
To echo basically what Andrew was saying, is that the management agreements are definitely a tool, and I think Alexandra here can push on that, is that they're definitely a tool to really make sure that the partnership between the ownership and the hotel operator is balanced. And the fact or the reality of hotel development within the world is that hotels are being developed with management or franchise agreements. So this is really something that is driving the hotel development globally. So it also means that it's a business model that works. And it's only a matter of time before that business model is very understood and tailored to each and every owner's demands, basically. It's something that's a working tool between the two entities. It's to clarify that partnership.
What's your point of view, your take on that, Alexandra? Yeah.
As much as I can be nice, you know. Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm a lawyer, and I negotiate, you know, for owners' hotel management agreements. So basically, I am against those guys. I am opposite the table, I would say, because clearly a hotel management agreement, it is, and I like, you know, I say it, you know, it's a marriage. It's a, you know, fixed term marriage, which hopefully are the happiest. So what really matters in a hotel management agreement is to understand, you know, this contract. It's something when you have never seen a hotel management agreement, you may be a bit shocked at first. You hear me now? Okay. Because there's a balance between the right of the owner and the right of the hotel operators. And you know, you need really to have a look at few clauses that are really, really important. And I think, you know, for the moment, when investing in Africa, in Morocco, but, you know, in the whole continent, some clauses can be quite of an issue for some owners. And for instance, you know, if you allow me to give you some examples, I have the term of the contract. You know, we see, and it really depends on operators also. You know, you have some operators that even still want contract for 80 years. I have, you know, I'm negotiating a contract at the moment, another one in Abidjan, and the operator wants
80 years. 80 years is a long time.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So
it's more than a marriage.
Yeah, it's you need to have a long life. So and the owner doesn't understand this brand. You know, his business model is based on this kind of length of time. So terms, the term of the contract is the first, you know, very important clause. And then you have the different kind of right. As you mentioned, the brand, they want to control, you know, how the hotel is built. You want the hotel to be built in accordance with your standards. And you have some other the termination clause, which is a big one usually for all the operators. Because if your hotel is not performing well, you don't want to stay in this marriage for, I don't know, 20, 30,
You need
50
an
years.
exit.
You need an exit, of
clause.
course. And the brand is, the operators are usually trying to, you know, not to, you know, allow the exit so easily. So that's why we negotiate very thoroughly the performance test. So yes, you know, it is a model that works. I totally agree with Faraz. It's something that has worked for the last, I have no idea, but I would say 40 years. You know, we've been negotiating contract for quite some time. It has worked very well in all regions of the world. But again, we need maybe to adapt and to, you know, take a bit more into consideration also the owner's need.
Okay, what are, for instance, the options in terms of hotel management agreements with regard to certain areas of the world? Let's say Morocco is in a mature market with regard to sub-Sahara countries. What would be, from your point of view, the approach for operators with hotel owners?
It really depends also on, you know, on the operators. You know, talking, you know, Movenpick, Hilton, Four Seasons, Fairmont, they're all so different, you know. They all come from a different culture. You know, whenever owner comes to me and say, I have a hotel management to negotiate, you know, it's going to be very, very different negotiation if I negotiate against those guys versus Marriott.
Yeah.
It's very different. The culture, their culture is different. Their approach to the culture is different. What I feel nowadays is that since, you know, 20 years ago, there were not so many operators, and they had all the power.
Yeah.
I think now there are newcomers, you know, that are very strong, new brand, that are much more flexible, and I can bring a lot also to the owner in Morocco.
Yeah.
So I think hotel operator needs to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
But I'm preaching for myself here, and they need to understand, you know, where the owner is coming from.
Yeah.
You know what the issue is going to be facing with his financing, with his employees. So we need to consider a bit also the local culture and the legal issues.
Absolutely, and there are some operators who have brands, and with the digital today, some of the brands that they launch, what would be the situation in like 5-10 years? Will we have the same brands? If one brand disappears and is replaced, what are the options for the owner?
If you have a valid, hotel management agreement and the brand doesn't exist, or even if there are only, 2 or 3 hotels still, with this brand in the world, that is an issue. And I think that's something that should be addressed normally in the hotel management agreement. Or, you have to go and see your operator, say it doesn't work. Because, if you have only, some brand, there are new brands created all the time.
Yeah.
So which means that some brands should not be so much relevant. So you need, I think like in any marriage, it's a communication also. Of course, in the legal wording, we can address many of those issues. But I think you always need to keep an open channel in communication, between the owner and the operator.
Yeah.
As the owner, you should be able to go and see the hotel general manager, to go and see the operator and talk to him about all the issues that you have.
Do you think, for instance, that in some mature markets, we can have operators operate a hotel for a certain number of years, and provided that they are, they have a team for the training of the personnel, the staff, and so on, and maybe after an X number of years, let's say 5 years, they can move from a classical, let's say, HMA to a franchise?
It happens. It happens sometimes. It really depends also on the brand, because when it's a really top luxury, the brands would not allow it. But yes, we've seen it. We've seen it where, you would have a hotel management agreement with an option for the owner after a certain period of time to have the contract becoming converted into a franchise agreement. And usually I would always advise to start negotiating the terms of the franchise agreement at that time. But we see that.
Mr. Nabil, you've been developing actually the Four Seasons in Marrakesh, and now you are developing M Avenue in Marrakesh, which is a mixed-use project, and that is going to create more day life in Marrakesh than nightlife in some other places in Marrakesh. What is your take and your point of view about hotel management agreements?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. As an owner-investor, I have a different take about the topic we just mentioned here. I oftentimes sit on the other side of the table against operators. And since we're in Africa, and I don't think anybody would question the potential of this market, or else we wouldn't be here. I don't think anybody questions whether Morocco has a successful market for operators. I think what's important to understand today from operators' point of view is that today, compared to 20 years ago, 20 years ago it was an operator's market.
Yeah.
Today, I think in Africa, particularly, operators have to understand that the partners in front of them, or the hotel owners, are completely different. They are not used to this model, which obviously started 34 years ago.
Yeah.
Two, they would look much more for the operator to get more involved financially and take part of the stake. So it is extremely difficult today to convince some of the African owners that we can build, invest, and then and provide the asset to an operator. I had the privilege to develop the Four Seasons Resort in Marrakesh, which was the first investment in Morocco. 10 years ago, it was everybody wanted Four Seasons, and as you just mentioned, operators are sometimes ask for a lot more than anybody was willing to do. One simple example is the non-disturbance clause.
Yeah.
It's something that in this market, or even in the African market, is extremely difficult. And the non-disturbance is that when an asset goes in default, the financial partner or the bank cannot move and take it over from the hands of the operator. So that's just one example of some of the challenges that operators would have, in addition to a few other things that take place in the market. So my take as an investor owner is that today operators have to, obviously they understand there is a big market in Africa. I think compared to Europe or Asia or even America, the market is here in Africa, so they have to look at it in a completely different, from a different angle, have to adapt a lot more to the African investor, because we're talking to a completely different
market
type of investor in this continent.
What are the challenges that operators, from your point of view, would be facing? Because if we look at this graph, for instance, you have in Nigeria is booming, and then you have Angola, Egypt, Morocco, in terms of hotels, in terms of rooms. So there is a trend. It's going fast. How can they deal with? Because Africa, when we talk about Africa, we think it's only one country. It's several countries. It's several mindsets. It's several cultures and subcultures. So in terms of doing business, what would be, from your point of view as an investor, if today, for instance, you are planning to build a hotel, to develop in Sub-Sahara and bring in with you one of the brands here, how would you go about it?
I think, as Andrew mentioned, the big challenge from an operator standpoint of view is to really find the right partner. It is a marriage where I often say it's unbalanced marriage, because one spends the money and the other one, pays for it, and so it's so it is obviously. As I said, it's more of a challenge in this market than probably in Europe or other markets. In terms of, from an owner standpoint of view, today, and I'm speaking for myself, I know Adil will have a different probably view. When I go to an African market, I think it's important that I find the right partner that would take some type of risk with me, because obviously this is a joint venture, this is a partnership. And today, from where I sit, and having gone through 10 years of development in this country, having developed, again, one of the best brands in the hotel world, today where I sit, I think the valuable partner for us as an investor, as an owner, is to have the operator that would understand that investment in Africa is extremely difficult. The financial world, or bankable project, as you mentioned earlier, is extremely challenging. The length of developing projects in Africa is extremely much longer than, as you mentioned, the average is 7 years in Africa, while other countries is 3 years. So the return on investments, it's much longer. So the owner in these types of markets is faced with a lot more challenges than elsewhere. So to go into a market in Africa with a partner who doesn't understand these challenges is almost a non-starter. So it is important that when I go with a partner, the management contract today, in my humble opinion, is something that's going to be very, very soon challenged and tested in the near future. Because of, as Alexandra said, there are a lot more operators today that are new, that are hungry.
Yes.
They want stake of the market, and especially in a virgin market like Africa, where there is a lot of interested parties that want to be at least settle in. So I think the operator, in my view, the traditional, conventional operators have to rethink certain the management contract model, and especially adapt it to the African market because of the type of investor, because of the challenges that the continent faces, and also because of the lack of viable investors.
Adil, you are an investor as well, so we have two investors here with us today. And you have a strong background also in banking in your track record. How would you say today you are developing a major mixed-use project in Rabat? Can you tell us about it, and in the components that are in it, also about the hospitality component, and how you have dealt with the operator that you have chosen as well?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to share my experience and my company's experience in the hospitality business. And I would start by explaining a few words very briefly what the Green Tech Valley project in Rabat. It's a 220 million US dollars investment, and we are very proud to announce to the people that come to see this project that it is fully equity, no debt. So it must look at a nonsense from a financial point of view, especially from bankers, and I am a former banker. But what we did in the Green Tech Valley for the financing issue was to share a long-term vision. We believe that once you have identified and invested in a highly valuable asset location, you have created immediately from day one a destination. And once you have the destination, I usually say that even if we are investors, even if we are developers, our key or core business today is creating flows. Flows of people, because it's flows of buyers, and it's flows of revenues for our clients. So what we experience in Green Tech Valley is that since the project is valuable, profitable, and based on a smart business model, you don't have that much difficulties to find financials or to find funds. From a banking perspective,
Yes.
developers must feel these people safe. They invest the money that they do not own, and they want to make sure that the risk is correctly assessed and correctly covered or mitigated. So if I just look at the history of this kind of project, people used to develop hotels, owners sometimes operate themselves the hotel. Today, the scale of this market has drastically changed, and of course we need specialists. From day one, in the Green Tech Valley, we said we're not operators, we're only investors. So let's look for operators, if possible, best in class. As my friend Nabil said, that will share the risk. And we have accomplished something that is quite new, I think, in Morocco, is that we have signed a lease contract and not a management contract. Meaning that the operators, that the candidates, all of them, understood that we provided a unique location. They did their own market study, added to ours, and they are not now very confident that the investment and the risk they are taking now is fully positive for their own company. So, to come back to the question, if we assume that the project is profitable, the location is good,
Yes.
the investment is balanced, and that your shareholders have the same long-term vision, then the financing is not an issue and the management contract will switch to lease contract. By the way, in the Green Tech Valley, we do not sell anything. We will stay and keep the ownership of the whole project.
So you do basically asset management.
Yes.
This is really a step forward here in Morocco, asset management. We'll be talking about it in one of the workshops later. I mentioned it. And it is, let's say, it is unusual even for hotel owners, typical hotel owners in Morocco, to think 1 second about asset management. For you, what can ensure you the viability of the project as an asset manager?
Okay. First, location. Second, the concept, architecture concept.
Yes.
And third, last but not least, the experience people will live. We are owners, we create a destination, we develop flows of people, and our main concern is to make these people stay as long as possible in our environment. We made it possible for our shareholders, by the way, IDB, an Arab Fund of Kuwait,
Yes.
to trust, to have confidence in that concept. Around the Green Tech Valley, 1.5 kilometers around of Green Tech Valley, we have almost 2.7 million people. So once you provide this unique location in the center of Rabat, there is no other way, unless you make some big mistakes, to bring a lot of people inside. Then it's the role and the business of all the stakeholders to make it a success and to transform it in good figures.
One of the challenges also for asset managers is to ensure that they create life in a mixed-use project. You've been telling me how concerned you are about sustainability, about wellness, besides the hospitality component. What is your take on that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we have partners like Schneider Electric, for example, for positive energy buildings.
Yes.
Renewable energy is a key issue, and one of the challenges we had to face from day one with our architect and all the team was to say, hey guys, we're working on a project, and when it will be developed, it will maybe out of the market. How to make it always new, always innovative, even if it's 5 years old, 10 years old. So we embedded a lot of new technologies, and the way the Green Tech Valley is built will make it possible to change the technologies without changing the walls, changing the buildings, changing the concrete. So we focused on positive energy, for
Yes.
positive building energy,
Yes.
and renewable energy, and experiencing and well-being. people come into the Green Tech Valley, as I said, must stay as long as possible. So it's not only a hotel,
Yeah.
it's a shopping mall, new generation, clinic, media city, spa, and these people must come and stay. Okay, in an urban position, I can feel an experience of relief.
Yes.
I can feel like I went to the countryside and I came back home. And it's really possible, and one of the, let's say, secrets I tell you about the Green Tech Valley is the lighting.
Yeah.
Lighting today, with
Yeah.
all the technologies with the lightings, is providing complete different experiences and changing experiences within 1-2 minutes.
Yeah.
And the experience of lighting will change the way we have a look at the project in the Valley,
Yeah.
all of the components. It will change, and it will have only one unique way each minute, each second, of course with an app,
Yeah.
that will make it the experience unique. That's what we want to provide to people.
Andrew, at the Movenpick in Marrakesh, you have also this kind of lighting. What is your concept behind that, and how much energy saving also are you aiming to make since you just opened the hotel? So in your forecasting, how much on utilities would you be saving?
Well, you give me the easy one to ask. So yeah, one of the big issues that we're working on in our hotels is to make space a very functional and active space. It's all social driven now. So one of the ways is through lighting, and you're absolutely right. Lighting is probably the most effective way to change the mood of a room or a space.
Yeah.
And so we're actually rolling it out in many of our upcoming hotels where we do have the LED lighting.
Yeah.
It is in the restaurants, it's in the public areas.
Yeah.
And so we may have a certain feel of light in the morning when you have breakfast, and then when you have lunch, there's a different mood in the all-day dining, and then in the evening, there's a different mood again.
Yes.
And then in the late evening, there's a different mood as well. And then we also introduce scent as well.
Yeah.
So you pump different types of scent
Yeah.
through the aircon vents at different times of the day.
Yeah.
In terms of cost savings, LED lighting is almost coming commonplace now.
Yeah.
But our hotel in Marrakesh, as with virtually 90% of our hotels, are all the Green Globe actual certified hotels. And typically, we are looking in terms of heat, light and power savings. When
Yes.
we have the Green Globe, typically 10 to 15%. The LED lighting has a return on investment of now 5 years.
Well, that's pretty appreciable, I would say. And Nabil, what are you doing in terms of development today in the area of renewable energy and sustainability and wellness? Because you also are planning a wellness in your, mixed-use project.
Yes, I think I failed to mention what we're actually developing. We've done the Four Seasons Resort, which is obviously open since 2011. And once it's opened, we decided what's next. How do we create and how we add value to the market? Because one of the things which is always the top of our list is how do we add value to the environment where we are?
Yeah.
And so what we decided to do, as opposed to add in additional inventory to the site, we decided to create and bring life to the site by creating a mixed-use project, including some branded residential, a cultural component, a retail component, a wellness, obviously, component, which is today, no one would argue that it's obviously a great opportunity, especially soft medicine and wellness project.
Yes.
All that lined up or surrounding a 500-meter long avenue, which actually starts where Andrew's Hotel just opened, and links up the major arterials in Marrakesh, which is Mohammed VI and Mohammed V, in a very prime location, and in between, I would say, great resorts, Four Seasons, a future W, and obviously Movenpick on the other side. To answer your question, there is no today. Every owner, every investor is very conscious about green development. I think it's the trend. That's what everybody wants. I don't think it's even the future. It's the present. So in every consultation, every discussion with service providers, with contractors, we always to look at for efficient ways to operate our buildings, to obviously to save costs, and also to reassure the people that are very conscious today with the environment aspects that, you know, the project we're building is environmentally friendly. We are launching, I would say, the first urban avenue, which is completely sustainable with waste management, with electrical, with water resources. Everything is recyclable within an urban environment, which is obviously nothing comes that easy. There's obviously challenges. You have to change mentalities. You have to change infrastructure that exists. You have to fight every day with certain organizations. But I think this is the way we're going forward, and this is the future. So it adds certainly costs to the development of the project, but in the long run, when we operate a hotel with a lower costs, obviously it's more revenues and more profit to the investor.
Mr. Adil, why do you think banks are lukewarm about investing or supporting, or providing loans in the industry? I've been speaking also to some investors, and like you or others. Now it looks like it's almost all the time 80 to 100% equity. Why is that trend like this?
Let's remind something. The DNA of bankers is covering, mitigating the risk. Today, we are developing, investing in a highly innovative environment. We want to embed new technologies. We want to invest in new lighting, LED, and the banks obviously prefer taking a risk of something they feel they know very well. Mm-hmm. And the 2008 crisis, worldwide crisis, has left obviously some scares. So maybe that's why the banks, the most dynamic banks, are developing their own funds to be stakeholders of these new developments. Yeah. But the DNA of the classical banks is to develop or to fund projects that they are very familiar with. Mm-hmm. They are not that. There's not a big will to provide funds, loans, for innovative projects and new projects. So you have two cases. The first one is economic sector that suffered from the crisis. It will take time. Yeah. And innovative sector, because it's new, they will ask developers and owners to go through funds from day one.
Okay. Now, just looking at this graph.
You have everybody to solve them actually on this panel. So having the advantage of a hospitality lawyer is really to find solutions to the issues that were raised. How do we see ourselves in the fast-pacing cities? We have the brands in order to be able to cater for these different cities. Yes. And we are really a hotel company that sees owners as partners, and we are all about finding the solutions to make these cities enabled with our brands. So.
Okay. Adil,
Um,
thank you.
I would like to say that to finish the point about the bankers, that today, worldwide, you ask about bankable project.
Yes.
I think we should think more about what means bankable. Bankable, to most of us or bankers, is how to create trust with the bankers. And how we create trust 20 years ago is not anymore the way we have to create trust
Yes.
today.
Yeah, definitely.
That's it.
Okay, Nabil?
I want to just make sure that I'm understood about the relationship between operators and owners. Obviously, we do need operators. They bring a tremendous amount of experience, and we do need them in these markets. With regards to bankable projects or financing as a whole, today we have to accept and realize that the development cost of a hotel has risen tremendously.
Yes.
And so the return on investment is much longer, and therefore the bank, its adversity for the risk is much less than, so therefore the bank requires a much stronger equity partner, much more securities, etc. So even the cost is not helping in financing these hotel projects, and one of the reasons, this is one of the reasons why you are seeing now more and more mixed-use projects to leverage or subsidize some of the investments that goes into the hotel. Most developers today are looking at a residential component and a retail, a business center, etc., to try to leverage and subsidize some of the costs that has to go into a hotel. So my conclusion is that operators and my dear friends here have to look at this continent, this market in a different way than the traditional conventional markets, the much more mature markets, and have to be a little bit more flexible with some of the investors because of the lack of investors understanding the asset management aspect, understanding that the role of an investor versus a role of an operator.
Thank you very much, Nabil. Alexandra?
Yeah, I obviously totally agree with this, but we also need more flexibility on hotel management, even in a more mature market. So yes, flexibility for me is the key term, and hopefully we will see some more international investors coming from the US, coming from from England, coming from France. So within the next couple of years, yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
In terms of Movenpick and our thoughts on these markets, absolutely, we want to be there. What is our strategy? You guys will be very happy to hear. It is flexibility. We see the same as what you have said. The traditional management operator attitude to management contracts, that's not going to fly anymore. You have to be flexible. You can't do 80-year terms. You cannot have NDAs. You have to sit with the owner and work out how you can value engineer the hotel to bring that budget down. Because at the end of the day, if he makes money, we make money. If he gets in trouble and the bank takes it over, we lose as well. So I'm very, very excited because for once, Movenpick, because we're privately owned and we don't have any of the hang-ups the other big operators have, we can be flexible. And you'd be happy to know, yes, I have a checkbook that I can write checks for, but it comes at a cost.
Well, thank you very much, Fabrice, Adil, Nabil, and Alexandra, and Andrew for being here. A round of applause for our panelists, please. And thank you very much for being with us today here in Mazagan. And now we are...
Q&A.
Yes.
Panelists, can I request you to be seated for just a minute more? Because we actually have time for a couple of questions, if anybody has any questions. Yes, this gentleman over here. So, and don't go, we want to, of course, give you a small token of appreciation before you go. So please be on stage for just 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Tarek Higazi. I'm the creative director of Living Design in Sweden. We do work with several brands. My question is actually about branding in Africa. I do believe truly that the statement coming from Hilton is not a real one, is not a correct one, that apply correctly to the market. Andrew, you're a single brand, so for you, you have no problem. Hilton, they do have a problem in actually classifying their brands. They have 13 brands out in the market. All 13 are only in the US. They moved few of the brands to Europe, London. I'll be very specific in my question, actually. Hilton, as a brand of Hilton, there are only 5 stars in North Africa, Sub-Sahara, South Africa, but when they go to Europe, the Hilton brand is a 4 stars. Look at London market. Also, investors in Africa, they do not accept Conrad, they do not accept all of this beautifully laid down brands. They only accept to have Hilton because of the Hilton loyalty program. Same thing apply with Marriott. So actually, all of the merging of the different brands, it's mainly for the shareholder value. It's not very much for consumers.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think your point is extremely interesting because we actually pride ourselves in having brands that are quite classified. To go back to your point about the stars, you can ask any operator, every star rating in every city in which we work in is different. So we don't aim for a star level, we aim for our brand standards. So if, for example, in one market having 4 fixtures in your bathroom instead of having 5 fixtures in your bathroom costs you a star, we're not going to ask the owners to invest money for something that isn't really going to make a difference. So basically, if you fit into our brand standards, so the Hiltons that you have mentioned, they fit our brand standards. And if that's the case, then it's a Hilton. To go back to your point about Hilton being only accepted by certain banks, I mean, there is a whole infrastructure with big groups. I mean, you can ask any hotel expert. This infrastructure goes way beyond cleaning the rooms. It goes into the HR aspects, into the reservation aspects, into all of these aspects. And all of that really brings you a value for your asset as an owner. Because basically, you're making sure that your building, your cash, is being put in some of the safest hands. So this is the case.
Another question, please? Yes?
An Abu Dhabi-based investment company. We invest into so many sectors, among which is hospitality in the GCC and here in Morocco. First of all, I would like to thank your panelists for their valuable contributions. They have highlighted so many elements that we all need to discuss. But I want to go back to the points whereby you did mention that operators are always looking for good partners. And you said it's a marriage. I agree with you. I need to move on to the bankers. You did mention that they look always for security and trust, yet they never come in as partners. We look at the investors. They are faced with the challenge of high equity, almost close to 100%. Investment-wise, does not make sense. Success-wise, it's great. Yes, we have to do it. If you look at the hotel's cost, they are always on a rising scale. Don't you think that there should be a solution among all of us to make sure that we create investments, such as operators? It is to your own interest to create your own fund, to come in as a temporary partner for a period of 5 and 6 years or 10 years, and then you exit, you become a pure operator. Instead of having the bank creating its own fund to forget that they are managing funds, now they want to become managers of hotels. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've hit upon an extremely important issue. Should operators look at just, instead of having the OpCo, which is the operating firm, have the PropCo, which is the property firm which invests or joint invests in hotels. We at Movenpick would definitely look at that. We have in the past, but at the present time our board has decided to go the asset-light route. But there would be nothing more than I personally would love us to set up the PropCo and the FinCo. We have a lot of money stuck in bank accounts in actually Switzerland, and put that money to cash. To work. Unfortunately, it's not my company, so we go for the asset-light role. However, I will say though, in Europe, we do lease hotels. In fact, out of the 24 hotels we operate in Europe, 22 are leases. So for an operator, when we give a lease, that's pretty strong as well. And would we do that in Africa? We'll be open to it.
Yeah,
we'll be open to it. But
Andrew, it depends also on the area. Some areas have a more mature market, like North Africa, Morocco, maybe Egypt. It's not the same dynamic in terms of development for these hotels, and also the same partners in terms of hotel owners. So do you think that in the coming years we'll be like having more examples, as Mr. Adil mentioned, of negotiating a lease with operators?
Simple answer, yes. What is going to happen is, as the market actually matures, the market will start to shift from management contracts to franchise and to lease. For us to do a lease in a market, it has to be politically very safe. It has to have all the legal structures in place. Because there's a huge liability that we as a company take on. There are not many companies in Africa who we feel are at that level, but they will be. They will be coming, and that's just natural progression. And as hotel owners, start to own hotels and get more actual experience, then operators such as Hilton will then start to have the confidence to franchise. So that's the natural progression.
Can I just, back to this point, I think my experience is that European operators are much more open to, I think Accor, as an example, has done such a model a while back, years back, and as I said, what I said earlier is that we're bound to change, we're bound to move forward in the relationship with operators from stakeholding or taking into a project to a complete lease. We're bound to go that way, because obviously for the same challenges you mentioned, banks are not willing to take the risk, the costs rising, investors are a bit more disturbed by certain parameters, and I think looking at European operators is already the right way to go.
Yes, I'd like to add something about the funding. I told you about the 100% equity, and obviously for a lot of people familiar with financial issues, it may look at as a nonsense. In the case of Green Tech Valley, we decided to go this way because it's the first one of 5 other projects coming. And if you look at history, all the biggest innovations were done from day one with proper funds, with own equity, all the developers, whatever the area. And when it creates money, when you show to all the economic environment that it creates money, then you go to leverage loans, bank, and then you will make, of course, bigger money. If it was only one project, I would agree with you totally. But the vision of Green Tech Valley is a Pan-African project. It's not only one project in Rabat. And secondly, to talk about the funds, you know this better than me, it depends on the size of the business. If you have today so many people worldwide in the Middle East and so in the South Asian area that have a lot of funds to invest, and they are asking for bankable, for profitable projects, but they don't find it. They don't find it because what is offered is not fitting what is expected. And this is the real challenge. From one side, you have investors, from the other side, you have operators, and how to make them communicate, find a deal, a profitable deal for both sides. It's a real challenge for the next decade.
Thank you very much, everybody. A round of applause again for our panelists. for the audience, and especially also we shouldn't forget our technical team and the interpreters. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sonny. Yeah, yes.
Mic test. Okay. Well, thank you very much, our dear panelists, and thank you very much, Kamal, for moderating such an interesting session. I'm sure there are lots of other questions. I personally have a lot of questions to ask myself, but in the interest of time, we have to take it offline. But before all of you go and off the stage, we would like to thank you immensely for sharing your insight with us. And as a token of our appreciation, I would request our director, Ravi, to come on stage and hand each one of you a memento.
Thank you very much.
A customized memento, which we have started. So to start from your right,
how are you?
We would like to hand a memento to Mr. Faraz Hasbini. Mr. Faraz would like to show that memento to everybody. It's very similar to what we handed over yesterday. It's actually a picture of the panel discussion that happened over the last 1 hour. And it's been framed and put in that trophy. We have next Mr. Adil Khayyam. Thank you very much, Mr. Adil. We also have a memento for Mr. Nabil Slitine. A memento for Miss Alexandra Plain. One for Mr. Andrew Langton as well. Last, but by absolutely no means the least, we had like to give a memento to Mr. Kamal.
Thank you so
And we'd like
much.
to mention a special thank you to Kamal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ravi.
A special thank you to Kamal for not only moderating the panel discussion and sharing his insight today,
Thank you.
but in the months and weeks leading up to the event, he has been very helpful and very instrumental, sharing with us his knowledge, his ideas, his experience in how things work over here in Morocco and how we can bring everything together. He's always been at hand, he's always been on speed dial, and we would like to take a moment to give an extra thanks or an additional thanks to you for all of the help that you've done, not just today, but in the months and weeks leading up to the event.
Thank you so much. It's the team, you know.
Thank you.
We are all together, and even if we were talking 3-4 times a day, even AB has been telling me that Ravi that was complaining because he's been talking to me more than Ravi, so, you know. So anyway, it's great to be with you guys and,
Thank you.
You know, to stage this event here in Mazagan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.